extremely different to my expectations of the games. Like, my first experience of CrossFit was watching the CrossFit Games. Like, I didn't start in a box and sort of slowly built up to it. I watched the games and I thought, I want to try that. Like, I want to compete at the CrossFit Games. And so watching it over the last few years, you sort of get this idea of like a brutal 12 to 16 workout competition, like 4 days long, maybe a bit of swimming, a bit of like road cycling, like a huge array of tests. And then I did 2 events and then got cut. So extremely different. Like, I've never ever done a CrossFit competition that ends in 2 events. My name is Luke Fiso. I come from New Zealand and I qualified through the Open as the fittest in New Zealand. It was crazy. Like, I have never ever done a competition where I'm standing on a field with 50 or 49 other guys, and I sort of like to feel the field and play based on who's around me, and I just couldn't. There's just too many people. Like, it was way too hard to figure out where that guy is relative to where I am and what I need to do to catch up to him. It's just like you kind of had to be in your own headspace, which I wasn't, unfortunately, and it didn't help my performance. But I don't know, it's like it would have been nice to have a few different tests where you have that situation maybe, and then you have a typical 10 guys on the floor and you can feel it out a little bit more. I personally, because of just how I got interested in the sport and have been sort of working towards getting to the games, like, I would rather qualify through regionals and sit here for 4 days and do all the workouts, and then even if it ends in the same way, like coming 40th, like if you came dead last, at least you get to do a whole lot of workouts. But I guess that's maybe me just hanging on to the old ways. Maybe this is actually a good way, and we'll find out in a few years. The CrossFit in New Zealand is kind of like a few years, I would say it's like a few years behind the Aussie scene. Like, in Australia, they always pick up on things a little bit quicker and then we follow along. But we've had CrossFit there for at least 10 years, I'd say, probably about 10 years. I've owned my own box for 6, so been around for a decent amount of time. But like, the competitive community is like a very strong intermediate level. Like, there's a couple of guys. There's Jamie Green, who's a Kiwi but competes out of Abu Dhabi, and then there's another guy who qualified in 2015, Kev Manuel. So he's been to the games before, and since then it's been Jamie holding the fort, and then now finally I've made it. So not a lot of New Zealand CrossFit Games athletes. This is my first experience with a lot of like anyone outside of Australia. Like, other than Hepner, who came to Down Under, I've never ever competed against these guys, so I never had an idea of how fast they move or what their strengths are, and it does make them human as well. So now for me mentally, I know how fast they go and what to expect, but also they're not superhumans. Like, they're beatable, and if you have the right events and you execute well, they can be beaten. So I think there's certain things that, depending on how they structure next year, like if it's very similar, there'll be a bit of a change in preparation. We probably focused on more of the typical game stuff, like the running, swimming, biking stuff, a bit too much. And when you've got to get through day one, it's all CrossFit, so maybe a bit of a change there. But also, like, just knowing that these guys are beatable, depending on the workouts. You've got to play to their strengths and sort of attack when you can. And I'll probably try to get a little bit more exposure to them as well through the sanctionals. Try and travel around a bit more, because, like I said, the New Zealand scene it's a great community, but it's not super competitive. So kind of need to travel to get some more experience. The brain's already going. Like, I was talking to my partner this morning. We're sort of planning out the year now. Like I said, I think maybe we should spend a solid chunk of time in either Europe or the US, so that we can get to some of these sanctionals. And I mean, the cost is massive if you're flying back and forth, so if we can base ourselves somewhere, that would be awesome. But obviously I've got my gym that I got to think about, and also the cost of doing that. So we'll see. Hopefully, it's become a pretty massive priority now after seeing the guys this weekend and realising that you really do need to go up against them a couple of times before you can really understand what it's like. I honestly like the last two events that they've had, Mary and the sprint zigzag. Like I said to John, he asked us what would be your ideal events, and I said anything with running, jumping, or squatting. And there's like 200 pistols, basically 200 something pistols in Mary, and like a zigzag sprint. I couldn't really ask for a better workout unless you put some double under Mary or something, like put 300 double unders in each round. So maybe some sort of zigzag sprint, some sort of like agility work, or like 1,000 pistols for time.